Ohio has suddenly become the center of attention after a series of strange events began unfolding across the state.
Whoa.
Helicopters have been seen circling farmlands. Mysterious boxes have been appearing in open fields, and unexplained impacts are being reported from above.
Tô passada.
Some believe it's just nature acting strangely, while others are convinced the government is hiding something serious.
But they're on our top field.
Nicole Hidalgo was out on her farmland in Appalachia, Kentucky, checking on her crops when a helicopter appeared low overhead. It kept circling her private property, and hanging from it was a long cable with what appeared to be a sensor attached. She managed to trace the tail number, and it led straight back to a Department of the Interior contracted fleet. What she could not explain was why it kept making passes over her land again and again. Locals started connecting it to recent rumors of government helicopters secretly dropping insects over farmland.
What the hell are you doing? Don't know about you. Don't call this trespassing.
Mystery box.
It is May 21st, 2026. That looks like a tick box, right?
A woman visiting Hayden Falls Park in Columbus, Ohio, one Sunday afternoon spotted something strange. Sitting in the middle of a dry grass field was a dark metal box. She filmed it from a distance, clearly hesitant to get any closer. What bothered her was how deliberately placed it looked. Not dumped, not forgotten, but positioned. Out of curiosity, she shared the clip on Instagram, where viewers suggested it was a government monitoring device agencies deploy without public notice.
What the crud is that? Looks like a tick box. I mean, come on.
Strange field pattern.
Amor, olha que negócio começou lá atrás.
Você tá dando pra filmar isso aí?
Tá dando pra filmar.
A couple visiting the rolling farmlands of Wiltshire, England, were driving along a country road when the view from a hilltop shocked them. Pressed into the green fields below was a massive formation of perfect circles, arranged in a pattern too precise and too large to have been casually made. The woman walked down to the edge and filmed it up close, clearly processing what she was looking at. From ground level, the scale was overwhelming, and when you look at it from above, it looks as if a UFO landed there.
Oh, eu tô sentindo um negócio muito louco na barriga, puxando a barriga assim, ó.
Hovering UFO.
So we're sure to see them.
A man in Murmansk, Russia, was in the middle of a chess game with his son when something outside the window caught his attention. Sliding low over the rooftops was a dark, disc-shaped object. No contrail, no engine noise, nothing that would place it in any category of known aircraft. He grabbed his phone and filmed it from where he stood. What unsettled people watching the footage was the altitude. It was too low to be ignored and too quiet to be explained. The Russian military never commented.
Sério, Catarina?
Tick invasion.
I'm out here mushroom hunting and I found, there it is right there, the tick box.
A man from Ashtabula County in northeast Ohio started noticing something deeply unsettling during his routine walks near his property. Every single time he stepped outside, he and his family came back covered in ticks. Not one or two, but dozens. He filmed himself talking about it, visibly frustrated and confused, saying it hadn't always been like this.
Every morning we come out here, ticks, ticks, ticks. I went inside after our walk the other day. I had one crawling on my leg. I had to get out. Like, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm not saying that, but like, why are there so many ticks in Illinois this year?
Then another resident from Medina County came forward with his own clip, saying he was outside for 20 minutes and counted 12 ticks crawling up his legs.
And I could see ticks literally crawling up my shoes and up my socks.
Both men lived near open fields where those mysterious metal boxes had also been spotted, and they were really concerned about what exactly had been released out there. Glowing ball. A man in rural Nebraska stepped outside one clear evening just to get a shot of the moon. Simple enough, but when he looked back at the footage, there was something else in the frame entirely. Right beside the moon, a glowing ball of light was descending toward the Earth, dragging a fiery orange trail of smoke behind it. It moved with that heavy, unstoppable speed that meteorites have, fast but visible, like something too large to burn up completely. Astronomers confirmed that the characteristics matched a meteorite entering the atmosphere. What nobody could tell him was where exactly it landed. Fallen meteorite.
What the This just fell from the sky.
Look at the trail.
A farmer working his field in Licking County, Ohio, stopped everything when something streaked down from the sky and punched straight into his soil. The impact left a hole in the ground with smoke still curling out of it. He grabbed his phone before even approaching, capturing the haze rising from the crater. When he finally got close enough to look inside, he found a jagged, foamy rock unlike anything he'd pulled from that land before. Its surface was porous and scorched, almost alien-looking. He believed it was a meteorite.
Still smoking and insane.
Crashed UFO. Residents of Madura Island in Indonesia walked out one morning to find something half buried in an empty lot that had not been there the night before. It was a large domed object, white and metallic, with a circular window and what looked like a hatch on its side, caked in dirt as if it had hit the ground hard. Crowds gathered immediately, filming from every angle. The shape was unlike any aircraft or satellite component people had seen before. People speculated it was a UFO, but officials took this object, and no official news was ever released. Strike over Guatemala. A live monitoring camera pointed at Volcán de Fuego in Guatemala captured something unexpected on the 25th of May, 2026, just after 10 in the evening. While lava already crept down the mountain slopes, a sudden burst of intense green light exploded on the right side of the frame, lighting up the entire hillside for a brief moment before vanishing. Astronomers who reviewed the footage suggested the flash matched the characteristics of a meteorite impact: the color, the speed, and the way it disappeared. But what do you think? Dropped from above. Villagers in a rural farming area of Rajasthan, India, were going about their evening when someone spotted something dark hovering silently in the sky above the fields. People gathered, necks craned, phones pointed upward. Then something fell. A group pushed through the dry wheat stalks to find a mangled, dark metallic object half buried in the crop, its frame twisted and scorched. It looked mechanical, almost like a shell of something larger. Some thought it was a drone that malfunctioned. Later, authorities took this object, and no official news was ever released. Strange sky patterns. A video captured over the snowy hills of Tromsø, Norway, spread across the internet within hours and left millions of viewers stunned. Two massive glowing blue formations appeared in the night sky, each one pulsing and dropping smaller orbs of light that spiraled downward in long, twisting trails. NASA later confirmed the display was part of their Auroral Zone upwelling rocket experiment, where sounding rockets launched from Andoya Space Center released chemical tracers into the upper atmosphere to study solar wind patterns. Worldwide hum.
Some strange sounds have been echoing through several local neighborhoods. People are losing sleep, and neighbors can't quite pinpoint the source.
For weeks, residents across Northside, Clifton, and Kemper, Washington neighborhoods in Cincinnati, Ohio, had been losing sleep over something they couldn't explain. Every night, starting around 10 in the evening, a strange oscillating noise filled the air, rising and falling like a siren, but with no emergency behind it. One man counted it happening a dozen times in a single night. A father said his son ran to him, convinced tornado sirens were going off.
My son came up to me and said, "Dad, the tornado sirens are going off."
It lasted until 3, sometimes 4 in the morning. Theories ranged from construction equipment to drones to the nearby rail yard, but no one could say for sure what the source of the sound was.
Hi, Kyle. Yeah, Sean Harold is the person who reached out to us. He actually lives in Clifton, and he really just wants to get some answers. Now, he spent last night logging how many times he heard this mysterious noise going on and off through the night. He counted about a dozen times, and all he wants to know is when this is going to stop.
White streak of lights.
Yeah, they're telling everyone to stay inside.
A man standing along the waterfront in Vancouver, British Columbia, was watching a storm roll in off the ocean when the clouds above the city did something that stopped him cold. A sharp, intense beam of white light began flickering across the entire cloud base, stretching from one end of the skyline to the other. It was a long, controlled pulse running horizontally, like something above those clouds was scanning the city below. Meteorologists call it shelf lightning, but he was not convinced.
They're heading for the mountains. Whoa!
Bright yellow eruption. People across the northern Ohio coastline stepped outside after a thunderous boom rattled their windows late one evening. Those near the Lake Erie shoreline grabbed their phones and pointed them toward the horizon. A blinding yellow ball of light had erupted in the distance, expanding outward in seconds before climbing into the orange sky, dragging a thick column of dark smoke behind it. Authorities later confirmed it was an industrial facility that had experienced a catastrophic burst. Star alien. A homeowner in Springfield, Illinois, was reviewing his Ring camera footage when he was left stunned. A bright, star-like object descended from the sky above the street outside his home and stopped just above ground level. It slowed, hovered, and began rotating, spinning in tight circles just above the road surface before drifting slowly along the street. Curious, he shared the clip on Twitter, where one commenter suggested that it might be an alien disguised as a glowing star. But I would like to know your take on it. Bizarre sky formation. A hiker who had set up camp overnight on a ridge in British Columbia, Canada, woke to a strange glow spreading across the valley. He grabbed his camera and caught something extraordinary building in the sky above the lake. A massive glowing ring of blue light was forming, rotating slowly, with a beam pulling downward toward the water like something was descending. Then, from below the cliff, a dark, domed craft covered in structured blue panels rose in front of him and disappeared into the clouds within seconds. He posted the clip on Twitter out of curiosity. Viewers were split. Half called it the most convincing UFO footage ever captured. The other half said it was edited. Full streak hole. A man was driving along the highway outside Tuxtla Gutierrez, Chiapas, when something on the right side of his windshield made him pull over completely. Cut into the clouds above was a perfect circular hole, edges smooth and deliberate, with a soft glow bleeding through from the other side. Out of curiosity, he searched online, and what he found was called a full streak hole, triggered when aircraft pass through supercooled clouds, causing a rapid freeze that punches a gap outward in every direction. The light outside.
What is that? It hasn't moved.
A man in a quiet residential neighborhood in Phoenix, Arizona, woke up in the middle of the night to a strange glow coming through his window. He grabbed his phone and stepped outside to film it. Hanging in the dark sky was a narrow beam of intense blue-purple light, perfectly straight, shooting downward from the clouds and stopping midair like it was anchored to something invisible. It just stood there for a while before fading. He shared the clip online, claiming it was a portal opening, but the viewers dismissed it as a hoax.
Look at it through my phone.
Glowing ground. A man staying at a snow resort in Aspen, Colorado, stepped outside late at night and noticed a strange glow coming from beneath the snow near the parking area. He crouched down and began digging through the snow with his hands while filming. A pulsing blue-white light appeared to shine from under the surface, pushing through the ice as if something unusual was hidden below. When the video was shared on Twitter, however, one viewer suggested it might have been staged to attract viewers' attention online. Mysterious malls. A man walking through Crossroads Mall in Oklahoma City started filming and asking strange questions. A hat store with 2 employees and almost no customers. A jewelry shop selling $2 earrings. A candle and nail polish store is somehow keeping its lights on. He walked the entire mall and kept filming. He believed this was not real, and we are living in a simulation. And the more you think about it, the harder it is to disagree that they are making money with no customers. Who is actually keeping these places running and why?
So I'm in the mall. This place, so coming to the mall makes me realize we're living in a simulation. Like, this can't be real. It has 2 people working in there. They're selling enough hats. They're selling enough hats just to pay 2 employees. No, I don't believe it. Icing sells enough $2 earrings to pay the rent? No way. This place, what do they do? They're selling nail polish and candles. There's no way.
Hidden camera. A woman checked into a hotel and was settling in for the night when her TV suddenly picked up something it should not have. A live Bluetooth camera feed coming from somewhere inside her own room. She immediately called her husband over, and together they searched the room, terrified by what they might find. Eventually, they discovered a hidden camera that had been deliberately planted. Her husband contacted hotel management, and after checking the room, they told the couple to call the police. But the woman had already called them herself. When officers arrived, they questioned everyone at the hotel, including staff and guests, but nothing suspicious was found except for one person who stood out, the front desk employee. What made the situation even more disturbing was the realization that this was not a glitch or a random signal error. Someone had placed that camera there on purpose. And the one question that kept haunting her was simple: how long had it been recording? Web over Grantham.
So this is in New Hampshire right now, June 6th, 8th, 9th, up in Grantham. Yeah. Yup, those are spiders.
A woman in Grantham, Virginia, was heading out to work one morning when something in her yard made her stop in her tracks. Overnight, an enormous spider web had consumed an entire tree in her front yard. The silk so thick and dense it looked like the tree had been wrapped in a white fog. And it hadn't stopped there. The web had continued growing until it reached her car parked nearby, stretching across the door and hood. Entomologists called it a mass ballooning event, thousands of spiders spinning together. Unidentified flying object. A commercial pilot cruising at 38,000 feet over the Rocky Mountains in Colorado filmed something outside his cockpit and was left shocked. Gliding parallel to his aircraft was a large, flat, triangular object with a dark metallic surface and a faint blue glow running along its underside. It wasn't shaped like anything in aviation. It matched his speed effortlessly before tilting upward at a strange angle and vanishing into the atmosphere. He radioed air traffic control, but no aircraft was reported on this route, so he believed it might be an unidentified flying object. Lights over Dayton.
What in the world? They're just hanging up there.
A man in Dayton, Ohio, stepped outside from his office at dusk and was walking toward his car when he noticed something above the rooftops that made him hit record. 4 glowing orange orbs were moving in the sky over his head. They weren't blinking like aircraft. They weren't drifting like lanterns. Then slowly, one by one, they changed their directions. Out of curiosity, he shared the clip on TikTok, where one of the commenters suggested that they might be missiles moving toward their targets.
They're fading out, one by one.
Peculiar oval object. A man in Salem, Massachusetts, was digging in his backyard when his shovel struck something solid that clearly didn't belong there. When he pulled it from the ground, he found a smooth, dark brown oval object. It was perfectly symmetrical, with a faint ridge around the middle that looked almost like a seam. Curious, he turned it over carefully in his hands and brought it close to a light bulb. Strangely, as soon as the object got near the bulb, the light went out. Then things became even more mysterious. He placed the object on a plate, set a mirror above it to look at its reflection, but no reflection appeared at all. He shared the clip online, but no one could explain what the object was. If you have any explanation, write it down in the comments. UFO behind clouds. A man in Tulsa, Oklahoma, was live streaming a thunderstorm from his rooftop when a lightning bolt lit up the entire sky and revealed something massive sitting above the clouds. For just a few seconds, the light exposed a dark, enormous shape hovering motionless, while everything around it swirled and churned. It had a strange opening visible at its base, wide and structured. He was convinced that whatever was above Tulsa that night was deciding whether to invade or not. Landed UFO. Villagers in northern Thailand stepped outside after hearing a strange sound coming from the forested hillside behind their homes. One man grabbed his phone and began filming. Up on the hill, partly hidden behind the trees, a glowing blue-green light appeared to flicker through the canopy. The strange part was that nothing around it seemed to move. There was no wind, no engine noise, and no sign of anyone nearby, just a steady glow sitting between the trunks. As the man slowly panned across the hillside, the light continued changing colors. The villagers believed something unusual may have landed behind the trees, possibly a UFO, but they were too frightened to go and investigate. Later, When authorities arrived and searched the area, they found nothing. Zurich spiral.
Look at the sky! Oh my god, it's like a hole. You see the light?
Residents near Zurich looked up one evening and found the sky doing something none of them had a ready explanation for. The clouds had begun rotating slowly into a tightening spiral high above the landscape, and as the formation pulled inward, a brilliant light appeared at its center, illuminating the entire structure from within. People stood watching it like the sky had decided to put on a demonstration. No object entered it, nothing emerged from it, and it unfolded with a strange, unhurried patience that made it harder to dismiss rather than easier.
Oh my god, look at that. It's like a hole in the clouds.
Shimorden column. On the 5th of February 2026, residents of Shimorden in Russia woke to find a powerful vertical column of light stretching from the horizon straight up into the atmosphere above their town. Most of them assumed it was the sun rising early and unusually bright. Then it became clear that sunrise had barely begun and nothing about what they were looking at matched any dawn they had seen before. The images spread fast, and the explanations that followed ranged from atmospheric refraction to something considerably less comfortable. No official statement was ever issued. New Jersey flashes. On the 6th of July 2018, a witness walking through a park in New Jersey during the late hours filmed the sky, producing something that bore no resemblance to any storm they had encountered before. Bright flashes burst repeatedly across sections of cloud cover in rapid, irregular succession, appearing and disappearing without the sustained illumination or accompanying sound that lightning produces. The bursts were disconnected, isolated, and seemed to originate from within the clouds rather than passing through them. One atmospheric phenomenon that matches this description is called sprites or elves, electrical discharges that occur above thunderstorm systems and remain largely unstudied due to how briefly and unpredictably they appear. Washington flashes.
So we all just got woken up to some disturbing sound all through the whole area.
In the early hours of the 27th of December 2025, a young woman in Washington, D.C. was pulled out of sleep by flashes of light and deep resonant sounds moving across the sky above the city. She looked outside and found her neighbors already doing the same, gathering in the street with no more information than she had. Someone suggested a power facility malfunction, and that theory lasted until it was quietly dismissed. The flashes continued without a source anyone on the ground could locate, and the sounds kept moving without attaching themselves to anything visible. No explanation was issued afterward. Washington, D.C. is one of the most heavily monitored airspaces on the planet, with restricted zones, military radar coverage, and surveillance infrastructure that operates around the clock. Bugging a country. What looks like smoke columns rising above Pune, India in this footage is not smoke. In mid-February 2024, dense swarms of mosquitoes formed into thick rotating columns across several areas of the city, visible from a distance and large enough to reduce outdoor activity across public spaces entirely. Residents stayed indoors, streets emptied out, and the scale of it prompted serious concern about mosquito-borne illness across the affected areas. Researchers pointed to rising water levels in the Mula Mutha River and prolonged damp conditions as the likely cause, creating the kind of breeding environment that produces population explosions of this scale. Mosquito swarms of sufficient density have been documented generating their own localized weather patterns, producing enough collective body heat and moisture displacement to influence the air column directly above them. Paris division. On the 30th of October 2025, the sky above central Paris divided itself into two completely separate conditions along a boundary so sharp it stopped pedestrians across the city mid-stride. One half sat under a heavy structured cloud layer with unusual texture running across its entire surface. The other half was completely clear blue with nothing in it. The line between them was absolute. No gradual blending, no transitional zone, none of the atmospheric mixing that occurs when two weather systems meet naturally. Idaho phenomenon.
Whoa, look at that line.
A driver on a country road in Idaho filmed something that reads almost like a visual joke until you realize nobody set it up. Snow was coming down on the left side of the road, settling properly on the tarmac and the grass beside it. The right side was bone dry. The division between them ran straight down the middle of the road and held there. Crossing it took less than a second, and drivers described the shift as instant. Meteorology has a technical name for localized precipitation boundaries, but nothing in the literature quite prepares you for watching one sit perfectly still down the center line of a road.
Dry here, snowing right there. All right, hand in. Oh, that's cold. One shoe snowy, one bone dry.
UK Mammatus.
Oh my god, look at this. They're not even moving.
People across the UK looked up one evening and genuinely weren't sure what they were seeing. The underside of the cloud cover had turned into something that looked borrowed from another planet. Rounded hanging masses packed together across the entire sky like the atmosphere above them had inverted itself. Mammatus clouds are real, formed when moisture-dense air drops downward instead of rising, and they are rare enough that most people go their entire lives without seeing them. They also tend to appear around systems that are building towards something severe. Catching them at sunset that evening, amber light soaking into every pouch and curve across the sky, made the whole thing look considerably less like a weather event and considerably more like a ceiling that was about to come down.
Feels like it could just drop and crush everything.
Crows claim Texas.
What's going on?
During the lockdown of May 2020, a Walmart car park in Texas became something out of a nightmare that nobody had scheduled into their afternoon. Millions of crows arrived without warning, descending in waves from the sky until the ground and every surrounding structure had gone dark beneath them. People who had ventured out during restrictions stood completely still, watching it happen. Behaviorists pointed out afterward that large crow gatherings of this scale have historically preceded seismic or atmospheric events, with certain species showing sensitivity to environmental shifts long before any instrument picks them up.
I got in my car just in time. This is ridiculous.
Horizon burns orange. Long Island residents stepped outside one night and found the entire sky glowing a deep saturated orange that had no single source. It wasn't concentrated toward one direction. It spread evenly across the horizon, lighting up streets and rooftops like something enormous was burning just out of view. The shift had been sudden. No cloud buildup, no warning, just dark and then this. It held for several minutes before fading back to nothing. No official explanation came afterward, and the people who filmed it noted that every photograph they took failed to show how wide and complete that orange light had actually been when they were standing underneath it. Strange phenomenon. At 3:30 in the morning on the 17th of April, 2026 residents of Melbourne were woken by a sound before they saw anything. Once outside, they found a vivid red phenomenon pulsing above the cloud layer, appearing, fading, then returning to the same position moments later. Red sprites are a documented atmospheric discharge that flash once at extreme altitude and disappear. What was above Melbourne that morning repeated itself, which means it was either a sustained energy source or an atmospheric reaction that nobody in meteorology had formally encountered in that pattern before. No aircraft activity was recorded in the area. Tree hit repeatedly. During severe rainfall in Portland, Oregon, a bystander filmed something that drew attention not for the storm itself, but for what the storm chose to focus on. A single tree was struck repeatedly in quick succession, each strike landing in the same spot and visibly weakening the structure until it came down. Multiple strikes to the same point during a single storm event do occur, but carry a probability low enough that engineers and meteorologists treat them as anomalies worth documenting. The footage spread not because of the tree, but because of the precision. Ice falls. Residents of Missoula, Montana stepped outside one day to find chunks of ice dropping from the sky large enough and heavy enough to cave in car roofs and shatter windshields across shopping center car parks. People caught in the open ran for cover and stayed there. The ice wasn't thin or brittle the way hail typically presents. It was compacted, layered, dense, built up over time. Scientists explained it through updraft cycling. Ice particles repeatedly lifted and coated inside storm systems until the weight becomes too much and everything drops at once. That explanation is real and documented.
It's breaking everything!
Taipei ground fire. Nobody in downtown Taipei had any warning before the ground cracked open that morning. No tremor, no seismic alert, nothing that gave anyone time to move before thick churning mud began pushing up through the surface in volumes that spread fast across the street. Then the flames came. Columns of fire reaching 2 meters high, burning steadily for hours, visible from surrounding blocks, in the middle of a populated urban district. Geologists pointed to pressurized gas pockets forcing their way up through unstable sediment as the likely explanation, and that mechanism exists and is understood. What was harder to account for was the scale of it happening without a single instrument in the region registering anything beforehand. Sudan bleeds red. On the 17th of August 2024, a man in Sudan filmed the sky above him and shared it, and the footage spread quickly because of what it showed. The atmosphere had turned a complete saturated red, not the faint warm tinting of a dusty sunset, but a density of color that filtered out nearly every other wavelength of light, leaving everything beneath it cast in the color of dried blood. Witnesses outside described the silence that came with it as unsettling in its own right, separate from the visual entirely. Vancouver strobing. A resident near Vancouver stepped outside after noticing something developing in the sky above his property and started filming from an elevated position on his land. What the footage captured was an electrical display that bore no resemblance to anything documented in that region before. The pattern was distorted, irregular, shifting in ways that didn't follow the logic of any natural discharge he or anyone he later showed it to could identify. Atmospheric electricity is one of the least completely understood phenomena in meteorology, with entire categories of high-altitude discharge, sprites, elves, jets, only formally confirmed by science in the last few decades. Beam cuts through. As the sun dropped toward the horizon somewhere over open land, a single beam of deep orange light appeared in the sky above the landscape below it, sharply defined, behaving less like sunlight filtering through clouds and more like something directed from above at a specific point on the ground. The edges of it were too clean. Crepuscular rays, the sunbeams that fan through cloud gaps at dusk, spread and soften as they descend. This one held its width from top to bottom with an intensity that didn't diffuse the way natural light does when it travels that distance through the atmosphere. Most people who watched the footage eventually landed on a natural explanation eventually, but a few are not yet convinced. What about you? Let me know in the comments. Grid in the sky.
Oh, look, are they moving?
Pedestrians in Tulsa looked up on the 15th of December 2025 and found a section of cloud cover glowing with a geometric pattern that had no business being there. Bright squares arranged in neat rows appeared within the illuminated area and held their formation for a few seconds before the light dropped and the sky went back to its normal overcast gray. Atmospheric optics can produce halos, arcs, and interference patterns when light interacts with ice crystals at specific angles, and some of those patterns carry geometric qualities. None of the documented optical phenomena on record produce a grid of evenly spaced squares in the cloud.
I've never seen anything like that in my life. It's gone.
Bloodfall. A waterfall running deep red across bright white ice looks like something a film production designed for effect. Antarctica's bloodfalls is entirely real and has been documented by scientists for decades. Ancient water trapped beneath the Taylor Glacier for an estimated 5 million years forces its way to the surface carrying dissolved iron that has had no contact with oxygen for longer than most species on Earth have existed. The moment it hits open air, the iron oxidizes and the water bleeds red across the ice below it. What makes it genuinely unsettling beyond the visual is what the water contains. Microbial life has been found, surviving in that subglacial pool in complete darkness, without oxygen, in below freezing temperatures, for millions of years. Sky strobes. In the early hours of the 10th of August 2025, the sky above Ashland, Nebraska began flashing with a strobe-like intensity that continued long enough to become genuinely disorienting for anyone standing outside watching it. It wasn't the brief illumination of a passing storm. It held, repeating across the cloud cover and the surrounding horizon, while strong winds were simultaneously tearing through the region at ground level and causing damage across several areas. The combination of what was happening in the sky and what was happening on the ground made it difficult to process as a single coherent weather event. An unreal unset. A driver on the E44 highway in the UAE pulled out his phone on the 27th of August 2025 because what was happening to the sky in front of him was too extraordinary to simply drive through. The sun sat perfectly centered on the horizon, surrounded by intense layers of orange and red that spread across the entire skyline with an evenness and depth that most people go their whole lives without seeing at that intensity. The footage went across Twitter within hours of him posting it. Scientists describe it through Rayleigh scattering, the process by which air molecules filter out shorter wavelengths of light at low sun angles and let the reds and oranges travel through undisturbed. That explanation is accurate and well established. Space debris.
A flaming chunk of suspected space junk has crash-landed in WA's outback. Stunned workers at a Pilbara mine site found the mysterious item burning and alerted emergency services.
Workers arriving for a night shift at a remote mining site in Western Australia spotted something sitting in the middle of the dirt road that stopped everyone cold. A large, dark mass was smoldering on the ground, its surface crumpled and charred, wrapped in what looked like scorched metallic material that had partially melted on impact. Western Australia police were called in and arrived in hazmat suits, carefully examining the object before moving it. Officially, it was logged as suspected space debris, but when the clip surfaced online, people suspected it was something far more mysterious. Exposed live. A video circulating online showed American actress Peyton List sitting in front of a live camera, wired up to a lie detector, being asked a very direct question. Was she part of an Illuminati club? She said no. The machine said otherwise.
As fellow Disney stars, are you all in a secret Illuminati-like club?
No.
Is it because you can't tell me if you are?
No.
Is that true, Sam?
Inconclusive.
And the look on her face at that moment told a story of its own. People have long suspected that Hollywood's biggest names don't just stumble into fame, that there are rituals, memberships, and agreements made well before the spotlight finds them. Highway Hoverer. On 27th of March 2011, a man was driving along a highway outside Binh Thuan, Vietnam, when a dark object caught his eye above the misty horizon. He grabbed his camera and kept it steady long enough to capture the shape hanging motionless in the grey morning sky. Curious, he posted the clip online. Some were convinced it was a UFO holding position above the road. Others brushed it off as a distant aircraft. The Desert Monolith.
We told you about this last night, and now more people are hoping to find the latest monolith that mysteriously popped up here in the Las Vegas desert.
Yeah, pretty interesting here. News 3's Ambar Rodriguez hiked her way out to Gas Peak Trail in search of the latest geological wonder.
Search and rescue teams with the Las Vegas Metro Police were patrolling the ridgeline near Gas Peak in Nevada when they spotted something that had no business being there. Standing alone in the middle of the desert, perfectly upright, was a tall mirrored monolith, its reflective surface catching the desert light against a backdrop of nothing for miles. People drove out and hiked for nearly 2 hours trying to reach it. Some never found it. Las Vegas had seen something like this back in 2020 near Fremont Street, and that one vanished just as quietly as it arrived. Witnesses named it the Desert Monolith, while those who couldn't find it believed it was a hoax.
I found, a few lizards, a rock, a radio tower that's empty, and this note that told me don't hike over here beforehand. Maybe the true monolith is the friends we make all along.
Unfortunately, we did not find the monolith, so the mystery continues.
Stuck between poles. Drivers heading along Jones Boulevard near the Tropicana intersection in Las Vegas, Nevada, had no warning before the power poles began falling. One after another, The old wooden structures came down across the road, pinning at least 6 cars underneath live electrical cables. One driver caught the moment his car was crushed on his dashcam, poles dropping faster than he could react. He had to climb out through the passenger side because live wires were pressing against his door. NV Energy arrived to photograph the damage, but they could not explain why multiple poles collapsed at once on a routine morning with no storm or collision. Giant sandworm. A man crossing the desert dunes of the Gobi in Mongolia in February 2023 captured something on camera that ran a chill down his spine. Jutting from the sand was a large, dark, elongated creature with what appeared to be spiny ridges along its back, partially buried. Then, without warning, it erupted from beneath the surface, launching a cloud of sand in every direction before disappearing back underground in seconds. Viewers online compared it to the Mongolian deathworm, a creature locals have described for centuries as a large sand-dwelling beast capable of moving beneath the desert floor undetected. Hazardous Technology Center.
Full water pressure in the kitchen. This is where I fill up water for storage. Those are the things we have to fill up to flush the toilets.
A family living just 400 yards from Meta's data center in rural Georgia thought they had found their forever home. What they didn't expect was what came after. Their water pressure dropped to almost nothing. Strange sediment began appearing in the air around their property. At night, the light pollution from the facility was so intense that it looked like daytime outside their windows. The woman filmed her kitchen tap barely producing a trickle and said it plainly. They felt they were up against a wall. A billion-dollar corporation moved in next door, and somehow the families living there are the ones paying the price. Sky turning strange.
Wow, look at that cloud.
A woman driving along the Gulf Coast Expressway in Mobile, Alabama, was left shocked when the sky ahead of her changed into something she had no words for. Towering clouds were expanding upward in real time, glowing a deep burning orange from within, while a perfect arc of iridescent rainbow light wrapped around the entire formation. It looked digital, like a sky that had been edited. She kept driving and filming because she had never seen anything like it before. If you have any idea how this formation is built over the sky, then let me know in the comments section.
Rainbow colors at the top.
Brady's success secret.
Any superstitions going into the game? Any special thing you carried into the game on Sunday that you had tucked away somewhere?
I did. I always, I've learned a lot from my wife over the years. She's so about the power of intention, and believing things that are really going to happen. And she always makes a little altar for me at the game because she just wills it so much.
Tom Brady sat back in a barber's chair at a Gillette event and casually revealed something that reframed his entire career. His wife, Gisele Bündchen, wasn't just supporting him from the stands. Before every game, she built small altars containing photos of their children, healing stones, and protection crystals.
And she always makes a little altar for me at the game because she just wills it so much. And so she put together a little altar for me that I could bring with pictures of my kids. And I have these little special stones and healing stones and protection stones. And she has me wear a necklace and take these drops she makes. And I say all these mantras.
And gave him specific drops to take before he walked onto the field. Brady admitted he stopped questioning her methods a long time ago and simply listened.
And I stopped questioning her a long time ago. I did. I just shut up and listened.
What made people's ears perk up was what came next. Gisele had correctly predicted the outcomes of multiple seasons before they happened. Winning years, losing years, all called in advance. Brady laughed and called her a good witch.
And at first I was like, this is kind of crazy. And then about 4 years ago, we were playing the Seahawks, and she said, you better listen to me. This is your year, but this is all the things you're going to have to do to win. And I did all those things, and by God, it worked. It was pretty good. And then in 2015, it was about early January, and she said, you know how much I love you? And I said, yeah. And she said, I just want to let you know this is not going to be your year. Oh. And of course, we lost. I said, what does 16 look like? And she said, 16 is going to be your year.
Unfamiliar creature. A group of women visiting a rural wetland area in Indiana stopped at a small farm pond when something surfaced near the muddy bank that none of them could identify. It had a large, dark, rounded head, smooth gray skin, and a wide, flat mouth lined with what appeared to be clawed appendages reaching outward. Its eyes were small and deeply set. Watching them without blinking, one of the women got close enough to film it. Then it slipped beneath the surface and never came back up. One of them was a zoologist who could not even identify what it was.
Oh my god. To get that.
Sky foam. A villager walking through the rice fields in Cianjur, West Java, Indonesia, looked up when strange dark masses started dropping from the sky without any warning. At first, they looked like rocks, but what actually landed around him were enormous clumps of dark, bubbly foam, soft, textured, covering the fields and settling along the village alleyways like the sky had spilt from above. Curious, he searched on Google and came to know that powerful storm winds can lift sea foam and carry it miles inland before dropping it all at once.
Mudah.
Shadow overhead. Late one night in Quito, Ecuador, locals were making their way down a dimly lit street when something passed overhead. The people below reacted instantly, screaming and scattering in every direction, some ducking behind parked cars, others just running without looking back. The shadow had no visible source attached to it. No aircraft, no drone lights, nothing. Witnesses believed it might be a flying saucer looking for a spot to land, but no extraterrestrial activity was ever reported on that night. Parking lot glitch.
Pull this back up because I thought maybe it's a car party, right? There's a bunch of like those weird looking Tesla vehicles over there, and I thought maybe it's like a car club.
A man had just finished shopping at a mall in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. He was sitting in his car when he noticed something strange. Several cars parked in front of him suddenly started flashing their lights at the same time, even though no one was near them and no alarms were going off. He quickly started recording. What made it even stranger was the timing. This happened during the same week when many people across New Jersey were reporting UAP drone sightings. Residents were already nervous, so the video made people wonder if something in the sky might be interfering with electronics on the ground. Bizarre tiny creature. A man hiking through the forests of Oregon stumbled across something on the ground that made him crouch down and look twice. It was a small skull, but not like any animal skull he'd come across before. The bone was pale and heavily textured, covered in what looked like dark, thread-like growth spreading across its surface. And then there was the eye socket, deep set, perfectly oval, with what appeared to be a thin membrane still stretched across it, almost glassy, almost intact. He shared the clip with one of his biologist friends, who was also left stunned as it did not match any known species. Strange sky anomaly. A man relaxing on the beach in Clearwater, Florida, heard an aircraft overhead and looked up, expecting something ordinary. What he saw made him keep the camera rolling. The plane passing above had an unusual number of wings, extending outward in a configuration he had never seen on any commercial or military aircraft before. Then he caught something else in the frame. 3 perfectly round, dark spheres were trailing behind, keeping pace with it effortlessly. He watched until they disappeared and left convinced that it was not something from this world. Ring duplication mystery. In the following footage, a woman claims something so bizarre that people on the internet can't decide what exactly happened to her. Laura Rawlings on TikTok posted a video saying she was deep cleaning her bathroom when she found a duplicate of the ring she was already wearing. She mentioned how she lives alone and has no partner, so finding a ring that looks exactly like her own really confused her. People were divided over this, with some saying someone lost the original and had a new one made that they gave you. But as she mentioned, she has no partner and lives alone. That didn't make sense. The one she found was also a bit dirty, like it had been there for a while, which only made the video even more mysterious. What do you think about this clip? Let me know in the comments. Unexpected storm. On the 6th of September 2025, residents of Islamabad watched a mass of cumulonimbus clouds build rapidly over a single concentrated section of sky while everything around it stayed clear. The formation strobe lit repeatedly from within and delivered a short, intense burst of rainfall directly below it before stopping entirely. Meteorologists attributed it to unstable local atmospheric conditions, which is the standard explanation and a real one. What made it harder to accept at face value was the precision of it. Storms spread, they bleed into surrounding air, they diffuse, they travel. This one stayed exactly where it formed, did what it did, and stopped. Ocean glow. A boat owner out on a night fishing trip found himself navigating dark water when something beneath the surface started illuminating the ocean around his hull. A large glowing mass sat at shallow depth below him, casting light upward through the water like an artificial sun sitting on the seabed. Marine life moved normally around it. The water showed no signs of heat or disturbance, and nothing about it behaved like any bioluminescent bloom he could identify. Bioluminescence in the open ocean is documented and real, produced by dinoflagellates and various deep-sea organisms, but it presents as a diffuse surface shimmer rather than a concentrated stationary light source at depth. Mysterious sighting. Dark clouds gathered over Morocco on the 22nd of May, 2026, and residents assumed rain was coming, which was the last straightforward assumption anyone in the area made that day. Rising through that cloud formation was a colossal angular structure, defined edges, deliberate geometry, bearing no resemblance to any aircraft in any publicly acknowledged inventory. Footage reached meteorologists, aviation analysts, and independent researchers internationally within hours, and none of them produced a conclusive explanation. Witnesses on the ground described it as completely motionless, while the clouds around it continued moving, which rules out any lighter than aircraft or atmospheric object. Rome divided. Something about the sky above Rome that evening stopped people mid-street. One half sat under heavy dark clouds, the other was bathed in full warm light, and the line between them was wrong. Not a gradual fade, the way light and atmosphere normally negotiate at dusk, but a clean, hard edge holding its position long after the sun had gone down. People filmed it and said afterward that the footage didn't capture the feeling of standing underneath it. That feeling being that the sky above one of the oldest cities in the world had been divided by something that wasn't weather. Acapulco fire. Nobody in Acapulco on the 26th of February 2026 could initially work out where the fire was. Something in the sky above the ocean was burning visibly, bright enough to draw people outside and convincing enough that the instinct was to look toward the tree line. There was no tree line involved. Whatever was producing that blaze was doing it in open air, above the water, with nothing underneath it. No boat, no platform, no coast. It burned without a source and went without an explanation, and the local authorities decided the most appropriate response was to say absolutely nothing. Nabaya figure. A crowd gathered on the 4th of April 2026 in Nabire, Papua, not because anyone called them there, but because something on the horizon made people stop and point. A cloud formation had built itself into a shape that nobody standing beneath it could easily dismiss. Tall, defined, unmistakably humanoid in outline. The religious interpretations came quickly, and so did the scientific ones, pareidolia being the obvious counter, the brain finding faces and figures in random shapes. Pareidolia works on things that shift before your eyes can settle. This formation held its shape on that horizon long enough that the scientific explanation started feeling like the harder one to defend. Pillars rise upward. On the 20th of April, 2026, vertical columns of light rose from the ground into the sky, and the explanation that followed was one that most people had never encountered before. Meteorologists identified them as light pillars, produced when flat hexagonal ice crystals suspended in cold still air act as horizontal mirrors, catching artificial light sources below and reflecting them straight upward. The conditions required are specific enough that most people will never see this in their lifetime. The temperature must be low enough to keep the crystals suspended, but calm enough to keep them perfectly aligned. Mystery of smoking tree. On the 12th of January 2025, a man walking through a snow-covered forest in Chicago stopped because one tree was doing something that none of the others were. A steady column of smoke was rising from it into the cold air above, consistent and visible, with no flame at the base, no char on the bark, no scorched ground around the trunk, and the snow immediately surrounding the roots, completely undisturbed. He stood and filmed it and left without an answer, which was the only honest response available to him. Certain tree species can generate internal biological heat during decomposition, a process called thermogenesis, but it rarely produces visible smoke in conditions this cold. Pavement catches fire. An elderly man sweeping a stretch of road in rural China filmed something by complete accident that nobody has satisfactorily explained since. Each time his broom made contact with one particular section of pavement, fire came up from the surface. Not sparks, not heat shimmer, actual visible flame rising from the ground on contact and disappearing when the broom lifted. He tried it several times and the result was the same every time. Theories afterward ranged from underground gas seepage to concentrated solar reflection to explanations that don't appear in any scientific literature. Mysterious Erie flash. The sky above Erie, Pennsylvania was settling into the evening when it suddenly changed its mind. A bystander watching the sunset saw the atmosphere light up with the full intensity of midday in a single sharp burst that held briefly before dusk came back and reclaimed it. Not a lightning strike, not an aircraft, not a tremor beneath the ground. Nothing in the vicinity was logged or reported that evening. That could account for what happened to that sky for those few seconds. Shenzhen occurrence. On the 5th of September 2025, bright glowing formations moved across the night sky above Shenzhen, and footage of them spread faster than any explanation could follow. When assessments eventually came, they pointed to a twilight rocket effect, a phenomenon where exhaust particles released at high altitude are caught by sunlight after the sun has already set below the horizon for everyone on the ground. The particles expand and drift through the upper atmosphere, and the sunlight hitting them from below the horizon produces vivid swirling patterns that look nothing like any rocket and nothing like any weather. It is a real and documented occurrence. It is also one of the stranger things that human technology has accidentally done to an evening sky above a city of nearly 18 million people. Metallic rain.
Après une pluie tempête, j'ai dû rentrer parce qu'on pouvait plus bosser.
A homeowner came back indoors after heavy rainfall and found tiny dark particles scattered across floors, furniture, and surfaces throughout the house. That alone would have been strange enough. What made it considerably stranger was that some of the specks appeared to be moving, trembling slightly, giving the impression for a moment that the house was covered in something living. Closer examination suggested metallic fragments rather than any organism. Environmental specialists pointed to the capacity of intense weather systems to lift and transport microscopic mineral-rich dust particles over vast distances before depositing them during rainfall.
Et là, en fait, regardez ce qu'il y a. C'est pas des larves de moustiques.
Yemen's abyss. Deep in the desert dunes of Yemen sits a hole in the ground that local communities have called the Well of Barhout for generations, and the name they gave it translates to the Prison of Demons. The opening stretches roughly 30 meters across and drops more than 100 meters straight down into darkness, with the bottom remaining unverified by any formal survey. The smell that rises from it has been described consistently by those who have stood at the edge as the smell of decay, persistent and sourceless. Yemeni authorities have historically discouraged people from approaching it. A small group of researchers made a descent in 2021 and reported finding snakes, dead birds, and the remains of animals at the base, along with cave pearls and a water source below. What they did not find was any natural explanation for why the air coming out of it smells the way it does. Sky tear.
Oh my god, look at that.
A woman on a private ranch in Idaho near the Rocky Mountain Range filmed a glowing white opening that appeared in the sky above her land without warning, and sat there long enough to be captured clearly before disappearing just as suddenly. No weather event preceded it. No aircraft was in the area. and the ranch sat far enough from any urban infrastructure that artificial light sources were not a factor. The Rocky Mountain Range has an extensive and largely undocumented history of unexplained aerial phenomena.
What is that?
No, take a picture.
Mysterious CCTV footage. This footage was recorded on a farm in Iowa at 1:33 a.m. when something happened to the farm no one can explain. One of the CCTVs captured the field being disturbed by something suddenly dropping on them, which caused a huge circular impact in the middle. The shockwave from the impact caused the surrounding harvest to instantly disappear, and others were ruined. What makes this video so mysterious was the fact nothing could be seen dropping on the field and there was no object in the middle. The owner of the farm, Stuart Turner, said he had never seen anything like this before, which is why some people speculated that it was a real crop circle forming in real time. Gravity glitch.
Okay, this is crazy, look.
In an undisclosed location, something impossible happened. A single leaf hovered in midair, not tied to a branch, not held by a string, just floating. A woman, curious, reached out and grabbed it, but when she let go, it stayed suspended like gravity had taken the day off. There were no wires, no tricks anyone could spot. The strange scene left people debating if it was a simple illusion or a small tear in how the world is supposed to work. Burning descent. In Campinas, Brazil, a man filming from his rooftop caught something fiery plummeting from the sky. The object crashed into a nearby field, sending up smoke, and then, according to him, something impossible happened. A glowing figure stepped out from the haze, stood for a moment, and then shot straight back into the sky. The clip went viral fast before anyone could delete it. Some say it's edited, others swear it's real. But whatever fell that night, it wasn't just space debris. Floating ring.
I am so confused.
In Melbourne, Australia, a couple out for a late-night walk spotted a glowing ring drifting high above the city. At first, they thought it was a drone, but it moved too smoothly, too quiet, too steady for that. The ring pulsed with shifting colors, almost breathing, before it faded into the clouds without a sound. Their stunned reaction says it all. Whatever that was, it didn't come from us. Ocean light mystery. Off the coast of Florida, a man standing on a dock captured something he couldn't explain. A bright blue light cutting across the night sky before diving straight into the Pacific Ocean. The glow lit up the water for several seconds, turning the dark waves almost white. Then, just as suddenly, it was gone. No splash, no smoke, no trace. Some say it was a meteor. Others think it was something far more controlled, like it was entering the ocean on purpose. To this day, no one knows what that glowing object really was. Weird whirl. In a shocking video from China, people were left baffled after witnessing this strange incident. Huge swirling tornadoes of something eerie spinning above their trees were captured on several videos. It looked like an apocalyptic phenomenon. Everyone thought maybe the end was near. But to everyone's surprise, it was later revealed that it wasn't aliens or anything apocalyptic, but rather pollen rising from trees. Now even experts weren't sure why they had taken this unique formation, as this hadn't been seen before. Los Angeles beam. People across Los Angeles looked up without warning one day and found a bright blue beam cutting vertically through the sky above the city, completely stationary, casting an unnatural glow across the area below it. No aircraft sound accompanied it, no weather event preceded it, and it produced no trail or dispersal the way light sources normally do when they interact with the atmosphere. Footage spread across the city within minutes, filmed from multiple separate locations. The two explanations that circulated were a rare atmospheric phenomenon or a test of classified directed energy technology. The American military has been formally developing directed energy weapons since the 1960s, and several programs remain classified to this day. Open discussion. A tourist photographing the White House caught something unexpected. Standing alongside Donald Trump were four tall figures dressed in identical red robes, each with long white hair falling past their shoulders. The image spread fast, and people immediately pointed to the Nordic alien descriptions that have circulated in UFO research circles for decades. Tall, pale, humanoid. Then a second clip surfaced from a Nevada airstrip, showing Trump walking across the tarmac alongside a figure with a bulbous head and big black eyes. Nevada. People connected the dots themselves, and the comment sections filled with speculation that aliens are visiting Earth, and the US GovT is hiding this secret from the public. If this blew your mind, smash that like button and subscribe to WOW for your weekly dose of weird and wild. Thank you so much for watching.